Andy, as we come into our new week of podcasts, and actually it's we're recording on Halloween, so
We
we're
are.
starting off like I guess this is the unofficial cutoff or start off to like the big time holidays when you think about it, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and then however you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, the variety of events at the end of the year and leading into New Year's.
Yeah.
My question for you, Andy, is this. November 1st, most people will hear this podcast. Most likely, Christmas music will be on some of the easy listening shows
Yeah.
already. Are you partaking or not, Andy?
So I should say I approve of the festivities. So I think it's really never too early to start the Christmas music. I think I will not be listening to easy listening stations or smooth jazz or anything along those lines. But I think I probably will get inspired to play my rather long Christmas
Oh.
playlist from time to time. So that probably will start making the rounds sooner rather than later. Typically, I'll have those moments when like I'm not sure what I want to listen to. I'm just not nothing is resonating, and I'll be like, hey, you know what? Let me hear some Christmas music. Let me hear Robbie Williams sing some Christmas tunes or whatever it might be, and go from there. So we'll see. I think it's coming, Dave. How about you? Are you ready to jump into the Christmas spirit?
I have a hard and fast rule, nothing until the day after Thanksgiving. I want to reflect on Thanksgiving. That's my hard and fast. But it is becoming more and more difficult, especially when I was leaving my office yesterday. In uptown Charlotte. They had the Christmas lights out. They had the snowflakes on the light poles and such. And I'm like, oh my, here we go. But Andy, we will talk about more of that later because that's a good holiday topic. I know we'll get into more of that stuff as we
Yes.
go along. I just thought it'd be fun to start with. But let's do a sports check-in, Andy. Last night, your Lions played well, I guess. I mean, it was closer than I thought. So
But let's take that I guess tone out of the conversation. I mean, I'm here, Dave. I lined up. I have a wall of Lions hats, and I brought several of them here next to me today, so I could entertain you during today's conversation. But you know, I mean, the score was too close because the Lions didn't get in the paint early on. They were kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns early on, but they dominated the Raiders. I mean, it was never really close. A turnover, a pick six, the Raiders got, and again, they just weren't getting in the end zone. So on one side, you can say, hey, the Lions look great. As a Lions fan, you can be super excited and celebrate that, and there's a lot to enjoy about it. But the bigger takeaway, I think, right, and there's a lot of good to take away. I mean, I could talk about this for hours and hours, as you know, but the bigger takeaway is just confirmation, I think, that Josh McDaniels and that the Las Vegas Raiders really suck. I mean, they are not even they're not a varsity football team, Dave, right? I mean, they played terrible football. Take away Max Crosby, who is an insane animal. I mean, that guy is entertaining. He is all
yeah,
speed, all energy, 100% adrenaline all the time. He's wild, but take him away, and that poor team looks like they just. I mean, it could be training camp. I mean,
mhm.
they were terrible. They couldn't complete a pass. Jimmy Garoppolo looked awful. I mean, you've got talent on that team. Couldn't get them the ball, and to be honest, they had the Lions beat a couple times. They could have had big plays, and they just could not connect. I mean, that team is terrible. So this further, I think, confirms in my mind that they will be one of the teams that loses their coach somewhere during the season because they're not going to win a lot of games. And the Lions looked awesome. They needed that game, a fourth primetime victory in a row, a great Monday night victory at home, puts them in a strong second place going to their bye week. But at the end of the day, I think the bigger story is really that the Raiders are an awful football team. Probably shouldn't be in the NFL. I think we can drop them into the CFL and bring up Toronto or somebody into the NFL this season because they're awful. They're awful. So hey, but I'll take it again. Where the Lions were wearing their throwbacks yesterday with the classic logo.
Yeah.
So some people don't like this. I think it's very amateurish, but I'm a big fan. This is my choice Lions hat this season. So hey, the Lions look good. I'm happy with it, Dave. I feel good about it.
Yeah, two parts here is one, I think it is good to bounce back, right? They had a really bad loss against the Ravens for a lot of
Right.
reasons we talked about last week.
We don't want to talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah, but good teams need to come back the next week and do and perform. And I'm happy for the city of Detroit, frankly, because this is a long suffering team.
yeah,
A long suffering. The city's gone through a lot too. I mean, I think there's a lot that has happened in Detroit over the last several decades. So it's good to see them and good to give this kind of feel. And frankly, I'm going to be excited for the first time in a while to watch Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, which
yeah.
usually that noon game, you're like, how do I get to the Cowboys game at 4:30? But here we go. So I'm good with that. The other part, Andy, like you've got to be really feeling good because the rest of your division is in chaos. Everybody's dealing with a backup quarterback now. Kirk Cousins is out for the rest of the year. So
Yeah.
what is Minnesota going to do there? They were rebuilding anyways. Frankly, the fact that they've won games is more of a credit to their coach than anything else. But now I do want to circle back too on the Josh McDaniels thing. They have a serviceable quarterback, Jimmy
Yeah.
Garoppolo. I mean, Kyle Shanahan won with Jimmy Garoppolo for years. They have an elite receiver,
Yeah.
Devontae Adams, and they have elite running back in Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
And this offense is horrible. I mean,
Terrible.
it's awful. And I mean, frankly, there's no. I mean, for somebody who's supposed to be an offensive guru, and I mean, is this his second year or third year in Los
It's his last year. I mean,
Yeah, it's his last year. Let's put that on the quote board there, Andy. I think it's his last year. Yeah, if he makes it that far. So, well, that's good. I'm happy for you, Andy. You had a good sports weekend.
if I could just say though, I mean, it's definitely saddened for Kirk Cousins. I mean, to be honest,
Yeah,
right, the NFC North is a lousy division this year. It's part of why the Lions are such a great position to finish very highly. And I was enjoying that reality. Got a little concerned because the Vikings started playing
yeah,
football better than they should, right? And that's a big credit to Kirk Cousins, who was playing some pretty fantastic football. Hate to see a guy, at his age, I think he's 36, if I recall,
yeah,
in a contract year, really fighting to make his team successful, to suffer a year-ending loss in a game that they had won and dominated. He played well. Really feel bad for the guy. He's a genuinely nice guy. He actually used to live in my neck of the woods when he played for the Commanders, and he actually attended my old church a few times, and he's a genuinely nice guy. You just hate to see somebody go out like that. I hope he can bounce back and get a contract next year and play football, meaningfully somewhere. For the Vikings, I mean, to be honest, they're as done as the Raiders are at this point. Without Kirk Cousins, they're not going to be able to do much, I don't think. And sorry to see their season end that way. Although I'm happy to see their season, go down in flames, generally speaking. So
that's true. Well, I do think it's interesting when you think about it. I mean, Kirk Cousins, he'll find a job. The question is like, is he going to embrace the voodoo magic that Aaron Rodgers has gone through with his Achilles injury
yeah,
and
yeah,
somehow, go into the dark rooms or wherever, whatever he's injecting into himself or spiritually going to whatever holes he's going to. But well, I'm glad you had a good weekend, Andy. Mine was, I would say it was mixed. Penn State played Indiana, and I couldn't watch the game. I mean, it's tough. I mean, the struggles of the offense continue. They have no wide receivers that can create any separation. Their offensive line, which was supposed to be one of the best in the country, is a joke.
yeah.
They can barely run the ball. I mean, they beat Indiana, which is they should have been. I mean, they play Maryland this week. They should beat Maryland. They're like of the last 46 games against Maryland, they've won 42 of them and tied one. So, I mean, look, they should beat Maryland, but you never know.
Yeah.
Maryland is pretty feisty these days, and so it'd be interesting to see. But then I perked up a little bit. The Cowboys had a pretty dominating win over the Rams. And so it was a decent sports weekend for me. I can't say that I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I will say my little 7-year-old daughter came to me yesterday and said, "Dad, can you teach me about football?" And I went through the roof. I was like, "This is great. I love it. So let's watch football." And my wife is sitting there with her hands buried in her palms and like, "Oh my God, where are we at now?"
Dave,
So
you've done well as a father. Your 7-year-old daughter is both a wrestling and football fan.
yep.
I commend you. I commend you. Congratulations to you. A successful job raising your daughter, and congratulations to your daughter on being off to a great start. Proud of her.
I can't claim many wins in my life, Andy, but there's I feel pretty good about these ones here. So, all right, so that's a good check-in on the sports front, Andy. We've been talking a lot about TV too over the last couple podcasts. Unfortunately, we had a unfortunate death this weekend with Matthew Perry, beloved actor on a lot of different shows, but obviously most notably for Friends,
Yeah.
a show that we both grew up in our formative years. Really enjoyed that. Any thoughts on Matthew Perry, passing that?
I mean, unfortunate. There's still some uncertainty about the circumstances of his passing. You hate to see a guy. I thought immediately of Whitney Houston, right, when she
Yeah.
also died in the drowning incident at home, and you just hate to see something like that happen. A young guy, I think he's not much older than we are, so very young guy. But you just hate seeing like that happen. I hope it wasn't some kind of issue he was going through. He hates to think of somebody going through something tragic and it ending badly, especially when they've had success and recognition, and seems to be a guy that people genuinely liked and cared about. It was a great cast. It's one of those shows where everything just sort of came together, really really well. It was fun, like so. Yeah, for our Gen X, timeline, it was just such a big part of that, and you hate to see that happen. So my heart goes out to him and his family, his friends, and it's just it's another sad passing. Anytime you see somebody pass away under situations like that, it's just unfortunate. Many years left to live, and he won't get to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, not much older than we are, Andy. I mean, it's only not too far, and it does pull a lot of things into place there. This is again when you think about, I mean, Matthew Perry's character Chandler Bing. I mean, he was unbelievable character. That show, and we talked about TV shows that there's probably not going to be very many shows like that anymore ever again. I mean, there's just too many different channels, too many different varieties. You don't often get that water cooler moments. We talked about this before with Seinfeld and some of those shows where everybody's coming in the next day. Did you see this? Did you see that? Now, I mean, Friends has gone through a revival, I think mostly through the COVID years when it was on Netflix. And a lot of our kids were just as familiar with him as we were growing up. And so that's really cool, similar to like The Office. But I think we've reached a time where we've gone away from some of that, commonalities, those things that we pull together as a country with, and like we can rally around. I mean, I don't want to make this sound like a huge, cultural shift, but it is, and there is a lot of shifting, and as more things have become available, we have tended to splinter off and gone in a lot of our different ways. Our groups become smaller, reinforcing some of our good or bad beliefs, one way or the other. So what are your thoughts on that, Andy? Where do you go with that?
Yeah, I mean, I get really split, to be honest, because I mean, we've touched on this before. We'll probably come back to it again, but on one hand, I love individualism, right? I love the fact that, especially now more than ever, you can find what you like, a community you like, watch what you like, listen to what you like, do what you like. And I love that. I love that we can each sort of find our own spot and not have to sort of conform to a bigger group, and it really lets people be who they are, which I think is awesome, right? So I love that, and I love the fact that people can be individuals and live their own best life and pursue their own happiness. I love all of that. But what I do think is a challenge as we go through that and celebrate that is that lack of shared experience, right? That water cooler moment you talked about, where everybody's on the same page about something and can share in something. Whether that goes to our, what we learn in school, in our basic civics classes, or the shared entertainment experience, from the big blockbuster movie or the popular show, and there's just something to that. As I started thinking about this, I was watching some of the just great tension happening around our country right now with the Israel and pro-Palestinian protests and demonstrations, and I just feel like we're just, in so many ways, we're so splintered, right? And everybody has their own take in reality on things, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that we're lacking that umbrella that makes us all part of that common tapestry, right? That we're all Americans, we're all in this together, and we might have differences which we celebrate, but we're part of one community. and I don't know that we're as much of one community as we used to be. It's just tough. We're very, we used to talk about it in the '90s, Dave, right? When you and I were serving, in the early 2000s, right? The term balkanization, right? In fact, there's all these separate little pockets, and I feel more and more like that is where we are today. And again, there's a lot to celebrate in that, but there's some things to mourn in that as well. And I think the importance of an identity as a people is important. And I think that's a struggle today when we don't have what I feel is like a common point to rally around, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but I'll pause for your thoughts, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is a really challenging topic, right? Because there's so many. I agree. I think everything you said is right on. I do think it's important that individuals who may have not felt comfortable being more open and out in, with themselves now have the ability to reach out to others who may be going through similar experiences and may be able to relate and have some good comfort there. I think that's important, right? I think, I believe everybody. I live with a couple very core principles. We really should keep, open. Like, we should not be judging others unless we want to be judged ourselves, and we really should embrace our neighbors and love our neighbors and really enjoy those things. I do think you've hit on a really good point, though, is in that vein, we've been able to, we're trying to go back into history and challenging those symbols that usually make up a community, right? Challenging those activities that usually bring a community together, and for one reason or another. I'm not saying that history is perfect and everybody in the past has done the right things, but I do think when you start trying to change the view of the past with what you see today in the lenses of today, you can really destroy that foundational base, and we don't come together too much as a community anymore. And I do think that's unfortunate because we've gone more to our pockets than we have into the larger group. And I think that sense of community is something that we really have lost over the last several years. Not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I do feel like there's some miss there. So I guess that's where I would go with it, Andy.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I think I think a lot of times of that shared experience, I think nothing maybe captures that better for me than two things, which was, one, playing football, and I think sports teams in general, and then two, serving the military, right? And those two I think are very unique in the spirit of camaraderie, that develops amongst those who are participating, right? I mean, a football team, it just gets closer. I mean, you're stinking it up, and you're doing 2 days, and you're suffering miserably, and everybody's sore and achy, and you're winning or losing together, and it really brings a team together, right? And there's a spirit that comes upon a team, and that applies to most sports, right? When you go through a season together of just grueling training and competition, you come together, and same thing when you serve in the military, when you deploy, right? Just that shared experience, like it just brings people together even when it sucks, and it always sucks in the military, right? But it still brings you together in a way, and that shared experience builds a culture and appreciation that I think is missing in a lot of other areas, right? You don't get that just going to the office. You don't get that when passively know your community. And so I think that lack of shared experience is significant, right? And so I think not that everybody is going to play on the same sports team, not everybody's going to serve in the military, although maybe more could, to be honest. But those sort of rallying points where as a community, as a people, even as a family in some cases, right? People haven't gone through that shared experience, that shared struggle, that shared fight, that shared growth opportunity. It makes us weaker, I think, as a community and a people. And I think our country's kind of going through that right now. We're not having a lot of those shared experiences. And so we're seeing more and more division and tension and lack of mutual respect. Even as we celebrate individualism, we're not necessarily respecting one another's individualism or appreciating where that comes from. And I think it really does hurt us because it elevates tensions and rhetoric and divisiveness. And that's not that overall in the long term, that's not healthy, right? I mean, it's, again, when you think of that football team and you guys go through crap together and sometimes you hate each other, but you appreciate one another because you're counting on that guy next to you. and you don't necessarily have that same experience in most pockets of society. So it's unfortunate. It's a challenge. I think it's a big national challenge. It's not something that can be fixed by any one, person or organization or effort. It's just sort of part of the evolution of our society that I think we should pause and think about, like, what can we do to maintain some kind of American identity? And some people might say, I don't care about that. I don't want an American identity. I think it's important as a country, to be honest.
Yeah, you've hit a lot of really good points there. And I think, I mean, this is obviously we could probably do 2 hours just on this topic alone. I do think I think one of the challenges with the shared experiences is you have people groups, as these, they're a small minority, a very small minority, but they've co-opted many of these symbols and traditions that for their own benefit, and they've used that in some instances in negative ways, on the left, on the right, on all sides. They've done that, and I think that's caused some of those challenges. I have my own thoughts on the military aspect too, because I mean, I 100% agree with what you said. I think, unfortunately, we've gone, like, I don't feel like there's a community that even wants to serve anymore. I mean, I think it used to be an honorable, I mean, look, it is still honorable to serve your country in so many different ways, whether that's through in the military or through a government service or community support. I think it's good to serve before you try to make the almighty dollar, right? But I think in a lot of respects we've allowed groups who, I mean, it's really a small segment of people who do it, and it's often because they have not many other choices, and I think that's really unfortunate. We used to have our politicians used to be heavily military, right?
Yeah.
Have a lot of military experience, and now none of rarely any of them do. And I think that's really unfortunate to go. But Andy, I know we could probably go on this for several more minutes, but let's switch topics unless you have any other lasting comments here.
Well, I'll say two quick things. One, I think we should come
Yeah.
back to the military and service and politics. One, I think it's a good topic for us to come back and discuss some more, to be honest. And then two, I'll say, there's the power of connection and tribes, right? Whether it's an American identity or otherwise. I think it's something to appreciate, right? I mean, just a short story. I was down at Virginia Tech visiting my oldest son a while ago, and a family was walking by, and the guy stops me and just gets really bright eyed. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're a Lions fan too?" Right? And we just chatted for a few. He was from Chicago, grew up in Detroit, and we just talked. But just that ability to connect and sort of celebrate something together, we were instantly connected, right? And we chatted, and there was a nice spirit of fraternity between us, and that kind of shared experience, right? Those identities, like that, I think it's really something we have to explore and understand. So again, it's something we talk about more another day, but so it's worth noting, right? Those shared experiences, those commonalities that we can enjoy together, really make a nice connection amongst the people, and I think that's something we could discuss further another day. So, Dave, let's pivot.
All right, we'll pivot one more topic here, Andy. We'll talk, so my morning routines, I get up in the morning, I before we usually podcast or do anything else, I go through and do a little walk outside. I used to run a little, not so much as anymore, and then I'll hit our little gym and I'll get my lift on a little bit. So, Andy, in the morning, when you're doing your workouts, where are you going music wise? Where are you going? I know you're a big music guy, obviously, New Music Fridays and such. Where are you going with your music?
Yeah, so that's a good one. So I had a long time, as I think we've talked about before in this podcast. So when COVID hit, I started working out with my sons, right? You get two young high schoolers, right? A freshman and a senior at the time. And I was like, hey, we're not going to just sit around and be miserable. So we started working out together. So I built a sort of safe playlist, right? It's like some rock and music that I enjoyed, kind of current, some older stuff, but it was non-explicit, right? Stuff that I could enjoy with my kids. And so I listened to that for years and years. And then my oldest son went off to school, and then this fall my youngest son went to school, and like I can't listen to that anymore because it makes me miss my kids so much when I listen to that playlist. So I have to come up with like something new to listen to. And so I've put together a few playlists, some current music. I've got one that's like good old heavy metal music, right? I've got a good AC/DC playlist. The challenge is always, I work out in my garage, and I play my music, kind of loud. I don't wear AirPods. I hate wearing AirPods when I work out. So I'm playing my music, and I find myself like sprinting over, and then that song I missed comes on, and somebody starts to curse or whatever. I'm like, oh no, the neighborhood kids, so I've got to run over and tone it down. But I still enjoy some good rock and roll. Usually, a lot of modern songs, that I try and play loud now. But it's good, aggressive, pump me up kind of music, I think, for the most part. How about you? Is it mostly Kenny G at this point, or what are you?
So I've hit a really weird spot, to be honest, Andy. Look, I think in my younger days, I like to throw in, like Stone Temple Pilots, like really hard metal and really like angry type of rock, maybe a little Metallica in there and some other stuff. I really enjoy that. I'm gonna be honest. Now I listen to podcasts, so like
Yeah.
even when I'm running, I'll listen to some of my favorite podcasts, and so I don't really have that same need to be like hard. Now look, that doesn't mean I don't throw in a little STP while I'm driving on whatever, and I want to get pumped up a little bit about something, but for the most part when I'm working out, it's mostly podcasts. So if I sheepishly saying, so I've really gotten away from like new music. I think we've talked about this a little bit, is I just don't listen to music as much. I don't listen to the radio hardly at all. So I don't really know what's out there. And then when I do listen to music, it's defaulting to my 90s playlist or something, or U2 or something to that effect. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's a good. So Andy, when you have your own gym, I guess you have your home gym or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
I go to my little local gym here. It's a really small gym, but it gives me what I need. And what are some of your like do's and don'ts for the gym? Like where are you at on that? Because I followed. Have you followed Joey Swole
No,
on
I know him, but I don't follow him. Yeah.
yeah, he's great because he's calling out these people who, get on and set up their cameras and such, and then they'll start getting mad at people. Like they'll set up their cameras and then they'll complain when somebody looks at them weird, and then they'll try to get likes and stuff. And he's calling all these people out. It's high comedy. I recommend following him. And one, he's a good guy in general. So I enjoy that follow. But where are you at on cameras in there? What about workout routine, like outfits and lingering on equipment? Where are your stance there, Andy?
I mean, I think when you're in the gym, you want to work out, right? And so
Yeah.
when people get too caught up in their pictures, it can be a little bit distracting. At the same time, I think a lot of people use that for motivation and encouragement, right? They want to see where they are, and they kind of, a lot of people are trying to cut weight, and they want to sort of get support and celebrate their. So I don't have a problem with it, and I think if you want to do it, but yeah, people are going to look at you if you're sitting there trying to take the perfect selfie in the middle of the gym. People are going to be like, are going to look at you. Right at the end of the day, don't be a distraction to others, right? And stay out of their way when they're working out, right? Get your workout in. I love working out at home because I don't have to deal with other people. So
Yeah.
I can take selfies all day if I want. It doesn't bother anybody. But I have other challenges, right? Because one, like I said, I live in a neighborhood and I want to be a decent neighbor. And I do play my music, and I know it can be sometimes heard outside of my garage walls. So I want to be sensitive to the local community, right? So I don't necessarily want to blast explicit music, right? There's the other day an older song from LinkedIn, and Jay-Z came on, and I was like, oh crap, so I ran over and I had to change it. And then, on a tire, I'll say, Dave, maybe a place to wrap up, and listeners can just enjoy this thought as they start their days. I work out in really short shorts, and so God bless my neighbors for tolerating, a 225, 230-pound man working out very loudly. I grunt and I'm a very loud guy working out, and I'm wearing these like ridiculous 3-inch running shorts the whole time, which for me are great and really comfortable, and I wear them, to be honest, most of the day. But for my poor neighbors, they've got to be looking at me thinking like, "Come on, man, put on some sweatpants," So at the end of the day, I think you do what you're comfortable with. You have grace with others, and you let them, as long as they're not hurting you. I think you give them some space. My neighbors are very generous about that. But I think try and be respectful while you enjoy your individuality and get your workout on.
Andy, now that you've ingrained that in my head, thank you. I'm reminded of the scene from Billy Madison when they're doing the academic decathlon at the end, and they do the track and field, and Billy pushes over his Bradley Whitford, I think is who the character or the guy was, and the students look and goes, oh, I can see his balls, you know, or whatever. So now I'm thinking like, great, this is my lasting image of Andy on to start
I
this
enjoy
week.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying things don't slip out ever, but hey, maybe great place to wrap things up. Billy Madison, a great run of Adam Sandler movies. They're basically all the same movie, but fun
yeah.
to watch in each of their different incarnations. So that's maybe a whole separate podcast is to talk about the brilliance of some of the early Adam Sandler years.
Oh, it was the best. It's still it holds through time. So, Andy, that's probably a good place to wrap up on a Tuesday for those listening on a Wednesday. Hope everybody got their full of tricks and treats, enjoyed their stuff, and then we'll kick off into the holiday season. Andy will convene later this week. We'll check in on a couple different things, but look forward to talking with you then.
Happy Halloween.
All right.